have notes?
Okay. Yes, I do. No, I don't have notes. We're going to work off of our checklist. Where's it stack? Okay. Okay, hi everybody. We're just starting here. Give me just a second.
Hi. We are the Dinosaur Omelet. My name is Angela.
I think my name is Christopher. Hi guys. Welcome back. All right, cool. So we're 29 seconds in here. If you guys are new and you just want to get to what we're talking about, we usually start about 5 minutes in. I do an introduction and give some time for people to stop in here. Tonight we're talking about everything to do with quail because we're pretty busy with quail people.
Mm-hmm.
We sell quail. Do we have quail eggs here? Let me go grab some quail eggs from the kitchen.
Yeah, this is usually end of winter, especially going into spring. People, at the very beginning of spring, people are thinking about their poultry and considering jumbo quail. They're an excellent option for having a high producer of eggs, and also you can use them for meat as well in a short amount of time. And they can be in a small hutch. So a lot of people are interested in their poultry this time of the year.
Yeah, and small hutch, you don't need a ton of property. So you guys who are interested in homesteading, or if you're starting new and you want to do a creature or do something food production wise, you can do that with the quail relatively easily and cheap. Let me see if we have sound. All right, good. So our mic wasn't working before. Yeah, so you can produce your own food at home in a suburban community. You don't need a huge piece of property, which I think is a common misconception because I think when you look at the kids' book, you see big farms.
Yeah.
And rolling hills. So they need a lot of rolling hills and all that good stuff. So quails, what do quails do? Well, I mean, they can produce meat if you want to have a meat program, but they're really great for generating eggs, for raising eggs. So these are quail eggs. Ooh, yummy. Aren't they cool? They're speckly. You see that? Little speckles? The speckled quail eggs. So these are jumbo coturnix quail that we raise. And we're going to talk about them in a second. I just want to show you guys these. These are quail eggs, and this is a chicken egg. It's about I usually say a comparison of 3 to 1. That's next to each other. Quail egg, big, filthy farm chicken egg. Quail egg, chicken egg. It's about 3 of these to 1 of these. Okay? And I will take a quail out and show you in a little bit. Give this just a moment to start up. So, did you sell quails? Did somebody pick on quails today?
Yes. Yeah, we had a couple who were brand new to animals, for raising animals. Yep. They're working on their small homestead, and they're already working on the plant life, and now they were wanting to delve into the what? What are you pointing at?
You should look at the thing more.
Oh, they're delving into animals now, and they're starting with the jumbo quail. They just got chicks from us today, and they are excited about eggs and meat.
And you know what we gave them? I always tell you guys, everybody's trying to scam everybody. We're pretty normal, level-headed people, so we're not scamming, which is great because my whole business model is we sell quail. I want to be at peace. We live in a very pretty area. I'm thankful for my life, so I don't have to rip people off and lie. So I give away a lot of really good stuff. And the thing we gave away to those guys today, which we usually do, is this little checklist, which is down in the description, which if you're interested in quail, 100% go look down the description. It's one of the first few things. You just click on the link and you can get to 25 question and answers on how to raise quail successfully. You don't have to spend hours learning how to do this. They're basically goldfish with feathers. If you raise them properly in their tank, they're going to be healthy and happy. That's what I equate them to.
Yeah, well, you meet the animals' needs, and they do well.
And their needs are not hard to meet.
No,
so go
not.
down, and there's a bunch of other junk I have down there, for care of the birds. But we're going to talk about all that in, it looks like 30 seconds. Once you usually get to the 5-minute mark, I start going over the content of these discussions. A lot of these have been academic, I guess, more like lecture style. So these are Q&As we've been doing, thanks to Verna's wise advice. But we might do another intensive teaching in a week or so. So if you guys have questions or comments about raising quail or birds in general, really, pop them down in the questions. It's getting in the spring, and I think you know, you need to be proactive with this stuff more like at the beginning of winter rather than scrambling in spring. But if you're scrambling, that's okay. There's still time. It's
Yeah.
just you're going to be scrambling a little more, I think. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to get started when you're ready to get started.
When you're ready.
It is what it is.
All right. Dun, 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 dun. I'm going to pull out this chicken so we can show it to everybody.
It's a quail.
It's a quail. And we'll officially begin. Hopefully it doesn't hop out. You want to hold this bird because you're usually better than me.
Sure.
Yeah, because
He always squishes them.
I squish him. I'm not good.
Here, there.
So this is
This is a boy.
he's a little nervous because we took him out of his cage.
Yeah.
He's a boy because you can tell with his coloring. These are jumbo coturnix quails. So as you can tell, they're not huge. They don't take up a ton of space. We always say about the size of what kind of piece of fruit? A watermelon? A grapefruit.
Mm-hmm.
So the size of about a grapefruit. They're just little balls with heads and feet and feathers. And yeah, they occupy very little space. That's why they're efficient food animals for small scale area, like a suburban area, or if you just want to have a project for the kids. Oh, he's going a little crazy.
Yeah.
Should we throw him back?
Yeah. In case you're curious, I'm not holding him very tightly, but I'm focusing on I have my thumbs right on his shoulders, and I'm putting slight pressure on his shoulders, which is pushing his wings down and against him. And because what he wants to do is get his wings out so he can start flapping and try and get away. And then he also tries to kick, and so my palms are kind of loosely, but in a consistent way, pressing slightly against his thighs to keep his legs more under control. He's not being squished, but he is being controlled.
Firm but not tight. Anyway, yeah, that's a jumbo coturnix quail, Coturnix japonica.
This is a wild or pharaoh, but it's like the same thing.
So there's a bunch of different.
Should I put them away?
Yeah, you can put them away. Different breeds or color varieties. So right, we raise these because these japonicas, these jumbo quail, because they're feather sexable and they're very consistent with that. And you can sex them at about 3 weeks. Is that correct?
Yes.
You coming back?
Yes.
She's running away. So you can feather sex them at 3 weeks. So they're very convenient birds for raising at home. People get wild about having different colors, which is fine, but we just focus on that one here for us. And use them as our food animal. We get a ton of eggs from them. So that was our quail. That was a male. They're feather sexable. The female, and I'm going to talk about all the good stuff in a second. The female is sexable because she has speckles. I'm an illustrator and I like to do our drawings, but she has speckles. So tonight, talking about quail. So I guess the main question is, I usually have an outline, but I'm going to go off the top of my head because we do this so often about quail. Why would I get quail over chickens? What's the benefit of quail versus chicken? I think that's a big, huge concern for people because people, when we think of eggs, we think poultry, we think chicken. The United States is a chicken country. It's not a quail country. Quail's overseas, but they're gaining popularity here. So why would I want quail? They're kind of small and they lay small eggs. That's goofy. Why would I want that? Does that make sense? I don't understand. Yes, it makes total sense. The reason quail make an excellent, not just alternative, but could be superior to the chicken for a lot of people in their application is because of, what do you say?
Actually, I would say a bunch of different things, but we'll just start off with,
cost.
Which one to
People
start
love
with?
money. We'll talk about cost.
Cost you want to start with, okay.
Yeah, chickens, if you're starting out with chickens, they become costly, to be honest with you. You got to be like, you're going to need space. You're going to need to run. They can't just sit in a house. They need to run to be exercised and have that access to that area.
I would say the most tempting thing as the number one for people who are learning about the quail and is like the wowza factor is their starting point of laying eggs. So chickens, if you're getting chicks, you have to raise the chick to a young adult chicken, and it takes usually around 5 to 7 months, 5 to 7 months before you get a first egg. And then the quail hens, they're going to start laying eggs around 6 weeks old and become consistent by around 8 weeks old, which is a huge difference. And you're going to get a ton of eggs.
That's right. People have very short attention spans and they're not very patient. So they want things quickly.
Yeah.
And the quail, they are very quick.
And
But-
then the cost. is
And
a
then
huge
the
thing.
cost, yeah. So that was my thing I was talking about. So the chicken, if you're raising chicken, you need to coordinate for a coop, the space for the coop, the run, the area that's they're going to have access to, their physical area, and of course fencing. Now all that stuff, once it's added up, it can get costly. It depends on what your budget is and your space allowances. So that can be very costly, and people, they realize, oh God, a coop's going to cost X amount of money, and then I need this much space in the yard, and then we have to put the fencing up, so it gets rather costly. Quail, they do not require the run, they don't require the space, and they don't require a large coop. They don't require as many square feet, obviously, because they're smaller than the chickens do. So you can raise them in a hutch. We always say hutch. Everybody's familiar with a hutch, usually a smaller box. The hutch needs to be built properly, and we'll talk about that. But they can be raised in a hutch about 3 quail per square foot. That's maxing it out, in our opinion.
Yeah.
Hey, Verna, we're doing another Q&A under your wise direction. I like the idea. So we're doing a quail Q&A. And we're basically going to go over a lot of the information that I put in here. So yeah, you can raise these critters in a hutch. And a hutch, if I'm doing my math correctly, is much less expensive than a coop, a run, and several yards of fencing and posts.
Our favorite quail. Well, for us, we're very practical. So, for me anyway, I'm a big fan of the jumbo.
I like the
wild.
California quail. We don't actually have them. I never mentioned it. When I was a kid, I used to love those California because they had a good little thing on their head. I love the California quail. But yeah, we just raised the coturnix quail for our meat program and for
The
jumbo.
jumbo.
Yeah, the jumbo
The
coturnix.
coturnix is many types of quail under the umbrella
I'm just
of
so used to
coturnix.
talking about
Yeah.
these things. Yeah, we raised the jumbos for food and meat here.
Yeah.
And so, what was I saying about this hutch? Yeah, so the hutch is obviously much less expensive, takes up less space, and you can really plan. What's great about the hutch system is if you're doing a egg program, a food program, you can stack them. You can stack them, and that's a lot of the hutch systems are built like that, built as stacks. Colors are what? Others name them. Yeah, I was talking about that at the beginning of this thing, the coloration, like. I was telling everybody we just raised these.
Yeah,
wild,
we just do the wild farrow.
I think we had
type.
white at the very beginning.
We did. We had jumbo whites, but
Can't sex them.
you have to
when they're
vent.
young.
You have to vent sex them, and we're just really all about efficiency. So I want to be able to quickly sex them, and just. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to have I want to be able to have them together and not a bunch of separate pens. And
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Like my thing is intentionality, having an intent or a purpose with everything. I mean, I know people like that, the anal types. You don't want to be around them, but
for the food. Yeah.
But yeah, I want to have intent. So I'm looking at, well, I want to raise what kind of animal. I'm raising these jumbo quail because they're going to be the most efficient food producers. The return of investment on space usage and money invested is probably the greatest, especially compared to the chickens. You're getting a lot of return with the quail. Not selling them. We have a ton of experience. People buy them. I don't need to hawk them on here, but they definitely have huge benefits. What did Verna say here?
She liked the jumbo wild and the jumbo white wings.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I like them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still saying California's are nice, but we'll never get them. Anyway, so yeah, chicken versus quail. Quail are they lay eggs very young. At 6 to 8 weeks, you're getting eggs from a quail as opposed to 5 or 6 months from a chicken. They take up much less space because you're raising them in a hutch. So that's basically the footprint of the hutch is your ground that's going to be allocated. And Verna left a note saying, for pretty quail, I love the pansy fee.
Yeah, there's a lot of really pretty colors for sure.
I'm waiting to see the weird genetic engineered quail. The CRISPR technology quail coming out. I'm pretty sure. I mean, you can rent a kit and make your own wild animals at home. Or buy a kit. Anywho, what was I saying? Space allocation small. They lay quickly. They cost
and
less.
it's not just that they lay quickly. Because some people are still stuck on their eggs are so small. Yes, but they lay a lot of eggs. So the hens, they're going to lay almost daily. They might skip a day here and there, but it'll be around 300 eggs you'll get. So I guess it's not daily, but it's,
If you want a chicken for an egg, just replace it with 3 quail.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, you're gonna get, like, if you have 10 jumbo quail hens, you're gonna get anywhere from 8 to 12 eggs a day, because somebody will skip here and there, and somebody will have 2 in a day. It just depends on the hens.
So the wife or the husband, when you guys are at home, oh, I wish we could have chickens. Oh, we can't have chickens. We're not allowed to have chickens. What about quail? Well, okay, great. Well, if we were getting chickens, honey, I wanted to get like maybe 5 or 6 chickens so you get half a dozen eggs a day. I always use that number 6. Okay, great. So now we have a number 6. I can't have chickens, but I want 6 eggs a day. I can have quail. So I want to replace those 6 chickens to get the equivalent amount of eggs. I will use 3 hens, 3 quail hens for each of those chickens, or 3 times 6. So 18 quail will satisfy the need of the equivalent of a half a dozen or 6 chicken eggs daily.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I keep looking down here because our sophisticated setup is telephone up here, iPad down here. With the right setup, it only takes a few minutes a day to make sure their food and water is good. Gather eggs daily, clean the litter trays every 3 to 4 days. Right, yeah, especially if you're housing them, right, with proper planning and you house them out, right. They're pretty low maintenance. And you know what's great about them too? I forgot. With chicken and quail, 2 things. One, they're much less prone to predators because they're in a hutch. If your hutch is constructed properly, we've never had, I don't think we ever had a predator. I think we may have had one incident of a raccoon or something eating off foot. Did we? I don't know. Maybe that was some other animal. It was the bunnies. Anyway, yeah, if your cage is predator proofed, you're never going to have a problem with predators. Chickens are more susceptible to predators because they're out in their territory. They're outside. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a rat. Yeah, that's what I was. We had little rats. You know, I watched The Secret of Nim, and I kind of have a thing for rats.
Issues with the predators. It's more the raccoons go for our chickens, so we always have to make sure all the coops and everything are safe. But the quail hutches, we use the hardware cloth, which is very durable. But yeah, the jumbo quail, they're very they're versatile in skill level. So if somebody has never had any experience even raising animals, these guys are great for the beginner. They're smaller. They're small. Everything's smaller, so it's not difficult to manage. And then also the person who's very skilled and maybe they have a big facility, a big farm or whatever, that type of person would highly benefit as well because they're easy to raise and then you can get high production going. But they're great to get kids started into poultry as well.
Speaking of which, getting kids into poultry, I always like flashing this. Families, are you listening? Down there in the description. I know I was trying to get you to download this. They're free, so I'm not getting paid. I'll charge eventually. There's a kid's book down there about quail, how to raise quail. I wrote and illustrated this little kid's book. So there's all kinds of information in there for the kids. It's down in the description. You can click on it. It's a PDF. And then Verna said, and if they peck you, it doesn't really hurt.
Yeah, and they're not.
That's
the
true.
Aggression level is there's no. You can have temperamental issues potentially with some chickens.
I was going to say kids and chickens. Kids get attacked by chickens and they get traumatized by a rooster or something, or they get pecked at by
a really dominant hen.
Well, a child standing, 2.5 or 3 feet tall, standing next to a chicken that comes. Can you imagine a chicken this tall on you, pecking at you? Yeah,
some hens are not intimidated.
So the quail are a little better. And so the quail we showed you looked a little wild. It's because we don't handle them. Mm-hmm. We're not handling them daily. They will tame, like most critters, if you handle them. Like the chickens. Chickens become very acclimated to people, and they'll come up to you and become tame to you. Mm-hmm. And the quail can become very tame if you put the time into the critter.
Yeah, if you
put the time into the animals.
If you're treating them more like pets and you interact with them often, you can handle them. There's people that will have them sit on their shoulder and they're just very
like
quietly
a pirate.
and content. And people give them treats and all sorts of things. And the quail, they become Very friendly.
Oh,
Hello.
that's our friend Taka, who I mistaken for somebody else for like 2 whole sessions. Hi, thanks for coming in.
Hello.
We're talking quail. If you have a question about the critters, let me know. Yeah, put your hand in the cage with treats like mealyworms. It gets them used to your hands.
Yeah.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our guys, they come in. They're like factory workers. They don't like the boss. They just come in, they do their job, and I'm like, where's my eggs? Okay. I mean, I'm not mean to them, but I'm not inviting them out for Christmas parties or anything. Yeah. But yeah, they will acclimate to people, and they will tame. So if you guys with families, kids or grandkids are looking for a good farm project for them, I would recommend investigating quail because they have a tactile experience. They're going to be interacting with them, and they get edible feedback. They're getting eggs for the work they put in, which is really a rewarding experience that I'm sure they'll remember. Like I remember getting eggs as a kid from chickens.
And it's always exciting.
Mine will be pets. Oh, good. It's good. Yeah, we get people who get quail from us. I mean, they're pets that lay eggs, kind of like your silkies, the silky chickens.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talk about cost, space, time to maturity for egg laying, which is also time to maturity for reproduction. Pets that poop breakfast. Exactly. So they reproduce at around that age too, 8 weeks. You can start hatching them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because the hens, they'll start their production of eggs at 6 weeks and get spotty, but the males, they're also going to they're essentially becoming sexually mature at 6 weeks. The males will start getting excited, and then the females are going to start, their egg production. And then they figure things out, their bodies get,
That's
more
right.
adjusted as they're continuing their growth. So then within the next 2 weeks, both are working well.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to segue into it's springtime. Now, what are people doing? They're getting quail chicks and chicken chicks. So what's happening with quail chicks? Where do we put quail chicks? We put them
In a brooder.
In a brooder. What's a brooder? A brooder is a box. A brooder is a container where
It's a safe space that's warm and cozy.
Yeah, you're raising. It's an artificial setup that mama hen should be tending to, but because these birds are pretty domesticated, they've lost that instinct to tend to the babies.
The quail.
Yeah, the quail. So we're going to set up an artificial mama heat source, which is your brooder, which is going to be your heat lamp, to protect them so you can feed them. So they're going to get to an age where they can, of course, go out to their grow out stage and to the outdoor cage eventually. You just want to protect them and grow them and make sure they're eating and healthy and safe, right?
Yeah.
So your brooder stage. I got my chicks. I just went to Angela and I got a box of chicks. Oh, wow, cool. They're small. How long are they staying in their brooder? And what happens in the brooder?
Well, it does depend on... So some people will keep them in the brooder until they're ready to be moved outside. Completely. Some people will keep them in the brooder for a brief amount of time because they grow so fast, and then move them into another temporary grow out cage that's not permanent. So it just depends on so let's just say you're going to keep them in the brooder until you're ready to put them outside.
It's springtime, and
yeah.
So what really matters too with these birds, because they feather very rapidly, you can put them outside in the freezing winter when they're 4 weeks old because they're fully feathered. So
Yeah,
their body will be insulated.
They're not only fully feathered, but they're also padded with meat. They're starting to fill out. Their body is filling out. So they're insulated well.
Yeah, they grow their feathers quickly. So the consideration with removal from brooder or grow out pen to out of doors is nighttime temperatures. Correct?
Yep. So you're thinking, let's see, if we're going into springtime, if the nighttime temperatures are holding at 40 degrees, they're not dropping, the nighttime temperatures aren't dropping below 40, then they should be totally fine to go out at 3 weeks old. If it's like 60 degrees, so now we're like in summertime, nighttime.
Nice warm night.
Yeah, if it's 60 degrees holding, then they're safe to go out at 2 weeks. But yeah, so if it's you're still getting some cold nights because it's just the beginning of spring, you're going to want to keep them indoors, temperature controlled. They don't need heat the whole time, but temperature controlled. That's just above that 40
Yeah.
until 3 weeks. So when they're in the brooder, if you have them, let's say you have them in your house somewhere and it's like either, living space somewhere where it's like 70 degrees or whatever your comfortable temperature is in your house, you have your brooder set up and you have your heat light or heat source. I talk a lot more about the heat lamps. I know people like to use the plates, but I like to
Live dangerously with our fire hazards.
I like monitoring their behavior, and I move the light according to what their behavior is. So some people will have a thermostat in their brooder and track the temperature and such. Or you can do just watching their behavior. So what you're looking for is that the chicks are going to be milling about in this space very happily. They're not like staying over to one side completely or huddled under the light. So if they're milling about everywhere comfortably, then you know they are comfortable in temperature. If the light source that's creating heat, if the brooder temperature is too cold, then the chicks are going to be right underneath the light and huddled. So you want to bring the light down closer to them to radiate the heat throughout better. If they're avoiding the space right underneath the light, then it's too hot and you're going to want to raise it.
Verna was saying in the apartment space, it's better to use the brooder plates. But you have to raise them up. Yeah, it's the proximity, how close they are.
Brooder plates work just fine. I just don't have experience with them, so that's why I don't really talk about them. But they're safe things to use.
I ran out and back in because it's been a while. If anybody's new here, here's a quail. I'll just bring a quail back for show and tell. This is a male. He's got an orange chest. He's going a little crazy because
we don't hold him.
we don't hold him very much.
We don't hold him.
But here's a male. And this is about how big these guys get. Yeah, it's a rooster. Yeah. And he's being quiet. That's the other thing about the quail, too. I forgot to mention in the quail versus chicken, they're very quiet.
Yeah,
they're very quiet.
True.
The male will make a crowing noise, like, I don't know.
It's like a chartly sound.
Yeah.
They sound more like a wild bird.
Sound like a wild bird. They don't do it very frequently. Definitely not as loud as a rooster, like a chicken rooster. And the hens, they really don't make much sound. They make a chirp like a cricket. So they're very quiet. So if you're doing a DL on the DL, quiet, down low in the neighborhood, and you don't want people knowing you have birds, these should work out fine, especially if you don't have a lot of males. With a lot of males, they're like any other dude. They're going to compete, and they're going to start crowing against each other, and that's when you start noticing some noise. So there's a male, and he wants to go back to his cage and go to bed, I think.
Yeah.
And I'll bring him outside. He's one of the older ones. How old is he?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the records. But yeah, so we just we talked about the heat. It's a good idea to have shavings on the bottom of the brooder, and I always encourage using a deep litter system, which just means you're going to add more shavings as needed over the soiled areas daily or as needed.
Which is good because then you're not having to clean it out, move birds, and deal with all that
Yeah, you
crap.
don't empty it at all. You just add to it until you take them out.
And it should be fine until the time comes to take them out, and then you just dump everything at once.
So as far as heat, how much heat? If the temperature of the room is a comfortable temperature, like for you, generally once they're a week and a half, like a week and a half old, they're gonna have a lot of feathers grown in by that point, and they're really not gonna need much heat on them. By 2 weeks, they won't need any heat in the brooder box, as long as they're in a temperature controlled space. Like some people will put them in a garage, and that's cold, so they'll still need heat. But if it's indoors, then 2 weeks they don't need any heat. By a week and a half, you can just start monitoring their behavior. Some brooders will hold heat in different than others. If it has tall walls, if it's a plastic or wood or whatever, or metal, they hold heat in differently. So you just monitor the birds.
I just want to say, all this brooder information, guess where? Down in the description. You guys, there's a how to care for chicks, that chick guide. Mm-hmm. We have a guide on caring for chicks. So I know it's a lot of information. So if you're actually thinking about doing this, you can print that up and you can use it as a reference. Very easy to read. Simple. I
Mm-hmm.
wrote this for kids. That's how easy it is.
Yeah.
So
And once they're a week and a half old as well, you're going to, if you haven't already, put something on top of the brooder, like a wire or some sort of cover, because they are going to start getting excited about their wings. And they'll become little helicopters. And then they'll go right out. So you want to keep them inside.
is that in my quail checklist thing?
I'm not sure.
And here's my quail checklist for raising the chicks. I don't know if I mentioned that in there. Maybe I did. I'll have to check it out. Okay, cool. So they have a short time in the brooder, and they can go outside, and then they'll start laying eggs at about 8 weeks or so, and then we're off.
Consistently, yeah.
And you can start breeding them if you want, or hatching them and replacing them, which you really should, because the female quail will have a successful egg-laying career of 18 months?
Yeah, like a year and a half.
A year and a half. So a year and a half, they're going to lay very consistently at that about 300 eggs annually per hen. But at 18 months, they're going to decline that rate. They're going to
It'll start dropping. They'll
dropping.
keep laying, but it's going to start dropping. And that's very similar to those high producer chicken breeds as well. So you're going to want to have a
They
plan.
live fast and die young. Well, they don't die young,
Well,
but
they can still
fast.
live, but not lay eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at 18 months, if you want to continue your high production of eggs, you need to prepare for that to have, get them hatched and get them to adult maturity age before that switch out time.
Mm-hmm.
Around that 18, 19 month period.
And it's always good to replace your roosters. Try to have your roosters replaced by 6 months if you can. The only reason why I say that is because they will start to become lazy and not really do their job as consistently. Now, some have much vigor and are very focused on their job and
breeding.
Yes, and
if you're going to hatch,
they'll service their ladies. Even I've had some even for a year, but most of them get lazy, sidetracked, and just become lumps and don't really care to. So make sure to have a plan to replace roosters. Minimum, I would say 6 months, but like 6, 7, 8 months of age.
New people
to make sure your eggs are still fertile.
Yes, new people who don't know, you do not need roosters for eggs, right? But if you want to hatch the eggs, you want a fertile rooster, something that's actually working, and they stop working very well after 6 months or so. The males do that. The hens will lay very well for about a year and a half. The roosters will fertilize eggs well for only half a year, 6 months. So you want to get ready to replace them. What did Berna say? Some roosters can be good for a year, but some aren't good at all.
And that is a good point. You do want to monitor them once in a while, just like, hang out and check them out and just watch everyone's behavior, because maybe you have 4 roosters in the, covey of hens, and 2 of them are like gung-ho, they're doing great, they're just hyper. One is just like, maybe, and the other, the 4th one, he might actually be kind of submissive. And sometimes the other roosters will kind of either beat him up, or he's just not willing to be dominant enough to kind of participate in claiming his ladies. So it is good to keep an eye out, because sometimes you'll just have a rooster hanging out, not doing his job.
Okay, here's a good point. So, since we're talking about growth stage, when they're puppies, when they're chicks, right? Those first few weeks, what do they need to eat? What should I feed them? Yep, those submissive ones, when you process why, you'll see why. Yeah, scrawny. Okay, so hold on. What do I feed my quail? There's 2 answers to that. There's going to be something for when they're young and they're growing very fast. And then there's going to be their adult feed when they're adults and they're not growing. Just like kids, they eat like monsters. They're just guzzling food constantly. Same with the animal kingdom and the other creatures. So with quail chicks, a very important component to their feed is the protein. We have a high protein mix. Right?
Yeah. So we encourage to use a high protein game bird feed.
Game bird feed is chicken people parlance. That's the language that we use for the feeds. if you
Well,
go into the tractor store or
yeah, if
something
you
like
go
that,
into the store,
it'll be labeled game bird feed.
what is that brand?
The one with the Purina?
Yes, but they have a game. They call it game bird feed. But yeah, it's a high protein. Theirs is 30%. We're big fans of the 30%. Some people can find like 28%. But the point of the high protein content is going to support that rapid growth.
Yeah, they grow very, very quickly, and you're going to notice with the coturnix chicks, these jumbos, they're doubling their size, I guess, every week, right? For the first few weeks.
They double their size every week. Once they hit about 5 weeks old, they're going to start slowing the growth, but they're going to keep growing until 10 weeks. But the rate slows down.
Yeah, they grow very, very fast.
Yeah, so keep them on that high protein continual feed. Like you don't want to let them run out of food. Because they're kind of like hummingbirds. They have to visit the feeder as needed. They eat what they need to support their body.
Yeah, if you put your hand down in the brooder, you'll feel the heat coming off of the chicks. They run high. They have a higher body temperature, it's about 104, and they respirate more than mammals. At least more than us big mammals. They're breathing a lot, so you're going to feel a lot of moisture and heat. So it's also important to keep any of these animal enclosures ventilated. It's hot and they're breathing a lot and there's a lot of moisture.
Ventilation is very important.
I want to make sure it's ventilated, but I don't want to sidetrack off the feed. So the feed as chicks, we're giving them 30% feed till about what?
So you give them until they mature. At 10 weeks, you're giving them that high protein, but at 6 weeks, once they're starting to lay eggs, we do recommend that you go 50-50. Half mix the feed, mix in layer feed, like chicken crumble, chicken layer feed.
Yeah, so it's not at 6 weeks you're cutting the high protein feed. What we recommend and what we do is we'll cut the high protein feed with half a 50% mix of a layer feed. Now this is going to reduce the overall protein, obviously, but you're introducing calcium. It still has a lot of protein in it, but it's not going to be 30%. And it's going to cost less. So the high protein feeds are expensive.
The layer feed's going to be around 16, 17, 18% protein. But there's going to be some nutrients in there that's supportive for adult bodies, but also it has the calcium to support the strengthening eggshells, creating the eggshells, strengthening the egg-laying muscles for the hens. So then you feed them the mix of layer feed and the high protein feed until then they finish growing at 10 weeks, and then you can switch them over completely to layer feed.
Now, speaking of protein, I'm going to just speak on this real quickly. This is a nutrition thing. It's a little more technical, so you may want to look into this yourself. So some people are concerned about plant proteins. Oh, I don't want a lot of plant protein in my chicken feed. Well, there's reasons why it's there, and reason why it's good, and reason why people want animal protein, but I don't think they understand why they want animal protein. Not to talk down about people, but so humans aren't designed to digest plant protein very efficiently. We digest animal protein. Sorry, vegans. Like, we're good at digesting animal protein, whereas the ruminants and monogastrics, like chickens, they're really good at digesting plant compounds and plant proteins. So yeah, they do have, most of these feeds are high plant proteins. Birds love bugs and grain. Yes, precisely. They have an omnivorous diet and they're quite adept at digesting both. Their systems are very well adapted for digesting both. We're not very good at digesting plants and synthesizing the materials that are in the plants for us to actually utilize them, where the birds and animals are. Again, it's technical. I don't want to get into that. But the protein content is usually going to be plant-based. Now, I know a lot of people raising chickens, they want to have omega-3s, so they may put the flaxseed in there, or animal proteins, fish proteins in particular, which will have some omega-3s in it to get into their diet.
I think there's often both animal and plant proteins. You'll see a lot of fish meal, seafood type foods, swine.
Well, it should be in there because there are.
You'll see the soybean meal as well, because that's a high protein.
Yeah, it should be in there. The animal proteins have amino acids and nutrients that are good for the birds. That's an aside, and I don't want to go on for hours about that. But interesting stuff. Okay, all right. So we talked about feed as chicks, feed when they get older. they're eating a layer feed
When they're mature.
when they're mature,
Mhm.
and the roosters are eating layer feed too.
Yeah, they're okay with it.
Okay. All right, great. So, so we talked about feed, and talking about feed, we talked about chickens with snacks. Can we give snacks and treats to the quail, especially
Definitely.
if you're keeping them as pets? So Taco wants to have pet quails.
Oh yeah, feed snacks. Yeah, I mean there's those
Not junk food
gribblies, the
snacks.
mealworms. There's they
Not
like
Doritos.
no, of course not. There's different types of plants. There's fruits. There's all sorts of things that they like to eat. It's very similar
You
to
can
chickens.
train them with the snacks so they get used to your hands. Like I think Vernon was saying earlier, introducing their treats, like their little worms or whatever you're giving them as treats. They'll come a running, and they'll know. Animals are very what do you call my pig? Food motivated. Yeah, animals are very
Yes, this is true.
food motivated.
Yeah.
All right, let me go with a couple more of these important big questions. Oh, here's a good one. Can my quail free range and let them run around? They love greens, but stay away from iceberg lettuce, yarrow, mealyworms, and black soldier flies. Black soldier flies, says Verna. Mealyworms and yarrowroot. Okay, now, so can I let my quail free range in the grass and the yard? That's a good question. Technically, yes. However, no. So when the quail, like a chicken can free range, they come back to their coop. Their instinct says come back to the house, seek safety from predators, and they go in a little coop and you lock them up. They're safe. Quail do a few things. One, they don't come back to roost. They're going to plop in the ground wherever they're sleeping. They're not, they're not aware territorial. They're just going to wander off and you're not going to see them again. And of course, they're going to get eaten. And if you have them in a fenced area, let's just say you want to put them in like a fenced area to let them just graze, which is cute. Unfortunately, they'll hop. They'll jump over the fence. They can get up like 6-7 feet or so when they fly. When they take to the wing, they don't fly. They just flutter up. They get about yay high and then come back down. So they can get over a fence, even if it's a fenced area that you want them roam. Quail don't roost. They hide in the grass. Everyone loves to eat quail. This is quite true. Snakes, fox, possums, raccoons, dogs,
Even your
cats.
dog. Yes.
They'll eat the quail if they see them out in the yard. But people do raise them in aviary style systems or even tractor them around. But anywhere you have access for a predator, this is the thing we always stress. Predator, predator, predator. Anywhere you have access for a predator to get into, you can assume they will. So if they can dig underneath of a tractor and get in, they will, right? I mean, if the tractor has, what do you call that, hardware cloth? That's one thing. But if it's something where a predator can get to. So can you free range them? You need to have your fenced area covered. So if they're hopping up, and then you're going to have to collect them at the end of the day anyway, because if they're in a fence that is poultry fencing, what do they call it, chicken wire, something will come and eat them. So yeah, I mean, people do commonly raise them in aviary systems. I have a video about that, or they'll tractor them around, which is fine. You just got to keep in mind, they're not going to come back. They don't roost. They don't come home like chickens. They wander off and they hop over fences. So,
and tractoring them, which is you have them in a cage that's on the ground and you move the cage around. People, like with meat chickens, people will move the cage to a new section of grass, as needed, so it's fresh. The thing with quail is they can get stressed pretty easily, and if they get stressed, they won't lay. They'll stop laying. So if you plan on tractoring, do keep in mind the movement could stress them out and stop the egg production. And predators, depending on how the sheltered area is, if they aren't locked in a shelter, they're just in the wired area at night. If there's predators that come along the cage at night and sniff at them and try to get at them, that's going to scare them. And
that's got to be scary. And I'm a full-grown large man, and I sleep in a tent, and I get scared. And I hear clicking outside of the tent. I'm like, oh my God, it's bears and wolverines. So I can imagine the quail will be a little shocked. Yeah, so That's that information. Oh, and another thing. The quail are not as biologically hardy as the chickens are to organisms present in the soil.
Yeah. So
So
internally, in their innards is not as hardy as the chicken.
yeah, like coccidiosis and other things, they may be more susceptible. Like if you have chickens eating in an area, they're all fine and dandy. You can put quail in the same area, and the pathogenic load will be so great that it'll overwhelm their little systems, and they'll get sick.
Yeah, they don't handle that well. So a chicken.
I'm not saying they get sick just because they're pathetic little weak birds, but
They're just small.
They're small.
Their bodies are small, so they can only handle so much, and a chicken can handle much more internally. However, quail are hardy when it comes to injuries.
yeah, they're like Wolverine from the movie. They can get beat up, torn to pieces.
If they get scalped, and the reason why that might happen is they might jump up and hit their head and cut open their head, or you might have a pecking altercation.
A chicken going through a big issue like that's a long healing process.
Well, chickens actually heal pretty quickly too, but not as fast.
Not as fast. We put them in chicken infirmary where they have like their healing box when they have a bad injury like that.
Yeah, the quail, they'll stop bleeding in a matter of like hours or less.
Because they have that high metabolism.
Yeah,
the body just heals itself up.
And then it'll just heal within a couple of days.
Not giving veterinary advice, but this is what we have not noticed. However, any injury you want to tend to.
Right.
You don't want to just say, you want to tend to the injury, examine it, or have it examined. Clean the injury and address it appropriately.
And put the quail in a quiet,
healing
area where it can de-stress while it heals.
Yeah. And they're up on their feet again, and they're running pretty good. Hey, it's Andy Rabbit. What up, brother? It's been a while. How you doing, man? Thanks for coming in. We're just doing a Quail 101, how-to, everything about quail chat, because it's been a while. I've been doing so many of these deeper, like, class-style chats. It's nice just to talk about the old birds. So it's coming into the hot type of season.
He says I'm doing good.
Oh, awesome, man. I see you in Verna's on the weekend. Just make sure any salve you use on quail does not have pain reliever in it. Oh, excellent point.
Yeah, pain reliever is toxic to the birds.
Oh, we got to put that in that video, too. I think it's in my outline.
It is.
My medical outline. Yeah.
I did want to mention about light.
I was about to talk about that.
Okay.
Oh, wait. No, I was talking about ventilation and heat in summer.
Oh. Well, so some people
We're talking about lighting and artificial lighting. Is that correct?
Well, just light in general, but yes, that too.
Light. We're talking about light.
When people are new to quail, they hear all this great news about they're going to get eggs maybe as soon as 6 weeks, might be consistent by 8 weeks. And as long as the quail's needs are met, as long as the quails are not stressed, they're not under stress. And what is a stress? A stress is predators lurking and scaring them. It could be maybe
that does stop their laying, the predators.
Yeah, it could be.
If you have a raccoon coming around.
Yeah, they get very scared, and it could stop for a couple of days. It could be they run out of food, and maybe you didn't realize it, and that's a stress on their body. They'll stop laying, that sort of thing. But also, you want to make sure they have enough light. So let's say it's you're going into the warmer months, and the daylight hours are much improved. We have a lot of light. And you want to have around 16 hours, like 14 to 18 hours of light for them to lay their eggs because it affects their hormone level. The light affects their hormone level.
Just like the chickens.
Yeah, to create their production. Also, the males need the light, too, for them to be active. If they don't have enough light, then they're just going to be bums. They're not going to do anything. But anyway, some people will be like, well, they're not stressed. There's no predators. They have all the food that they need. And they're still not getting eggs. Like, what's going on? Keep in mind placement of your cage, your hutch. Sometimes people will be thinking about the direct sunlight, and they want to make sure their birds are not getting overheated or anything like that. So maybe they'll put them in a shaded spot of their yard, which is a great idea. Just keep in mind, sometimes shades, depending on the type of shade, can be pretty dark.
Time
and
of
that
year.
can be dark enough, even if it's summertime, and you have like a...
Well, that's what you mean, the time of year, change of the position of the sun, and foliage when the leaves come in.
And so just even if it's daylight, but they're shaded. Maybe you have a really thick tree or they're the shade from your house that can reduce the lighting that they need.
That is not to say that if your quail are in a shady area, they just stop laying.
No, yeah.
You know, it's got to be significantly
But
dark, which can happen in shady areas.
I'm specifically referring to them starting their production.
Oh, okay.
So because I've had this question multiple times, and then
yeah.
So if you want to keep them in the shady spot, that's totally great. Just add a strip or some sort of lighting, a supplemental lighting to the hutch, which we encourage people to do anyway, because once fall comes around, the daylight hours will start diminishing, and if you want them to keep laying, they'll need that 14 to 18 hours of light every day. So yeah, if you have them in a shaded area, just add the light and keep it as a permanent fixture.
All right, people, a couple more things that are important and one that's kind of fun. Well, I'll start with the fun one because it's really not that fun. It's just something interesting. Quails, like chickens, like to entertain themselves and clean themselves. They like to take sand baths or dust baths. Mm-hmm. So while it's not required that you have a dust bath for these quails to function, it's always good to have it, especially like Taco. You want to have pet quails. You may want to put like a little litter pan or something in there, or however you set it up, with some sand. Like, what do we use? Play sand? Mm-hmm. Play sand. And they love it. I mean, when I put sand in there, they just...
You want to think about, like we talked about in the very beginning, meeting the animal's needs. So, yes, basic needs. But if they're super bored and they don't have anything to do, that can affect the quality of their life and their production level as well. So we do encourage sand baths because it does boost the quality of their life, and it's a social thing that they do together as well.
Uh-oh. Did you see what Andy said? Oh. Let me get this here. Did it come up? Where'd it go? Okay. You do have a point there. I'm talking to you. I had to cut down my shade tree, and I started getting three eggs 3 days ago. Before I didn't get eggs for another month or so in the past.
Yeah,
because the shade tree. Wow.
Yep, even the shade from a building nearby. It definitely, people be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right, so we were talking about dust baths. So the dust baths, the animals want to cool them, especially in summer. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they're cleaning themselves or taking off. So like when the birds are growing out their feathers, they leave these protein casts. And when they get that stuff off, they just clean themselves off. We take a bath with a sponge. They take a bath with the sand. I never thought about the shade slowing down their lying before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that subtle bit of light change, like to a human being, it's like, okay, I can still see. I'd lay an egg. What the hell's wrong with you guys? And then they stop. But the birds, they're working on their instinct. And like the way I explain it to make it sense, yes. So it's just the biology saying, God, there's really fantastic how these animals are designed. I used to put my quail in a tote that had a few inches of sand in it when I wanted to do a detailed cleaning of their cages, give them a party when I was working.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so like the birds, the chickens, these egg-laying animals, they don't want to raise young in an environment without food. Instinctively. So when there's not a lot of sunlight, their hormones in their body is getting ready to winterize. It's saying, winter's coming. If I have young, well, I guess they're not thinking this to themselves, but their body is thinking to themselves, if I have young, they're just going to die and starve to death, and I'm going to be expelling precious calories to produce the young anyway. This doesn't make sense. Let's hold off till the sun comes back, and there's green and bugs and all kinds of edibles. So they shut down for the winter time. And
then even just the fact of laying the egg itself takes a good amount of energy use from their body.
But of course, we can trick them with artificial lights. So they keep laying. And it's fine because animals, like I always say, in the equator regions, equatorial areas, they're laying. All right, so we talked about sand. The thing I wanted to mention that's important, so the couple important things, you guys, if you're getting quail, if you haven't had animals like this, poultry particularly before, ventilation is very important in the coop for chickens or the hutch structure for the quail. Why is this? So, as mentioned before, well, first of all, the animals, especially quail, they're spending all their time in their coop or their hutch. So it's getting soiled, their They're in there, they're heating it up with their bodies, and they're breathing. There's a lot of moisture that can collect.
So you're talking about if you have a sand bath sheltered area.
No, I'm just talking about the coop, why it needs to be ventilated.
Oh, a coop for chickens?
The hutch for the quail.
Well, I'm just saying because usually with a hutch, people tend to have like a mesh, like a hardwood
I know,
cloth
but
floor.
I'm saying this for people who don't know, because this is everything you need to know.
Okay.
So if you haven't built a hutch before for these quail, and you're like, oh, I have this box over here I used to raise whatever kind of animal in, it needs to be properly ventilated. I have hutch videos if you really want to look. There's plenty of hutch videos. I just recommend a lot of ventilation for the quail because they do respirate quite a bit. They do produce a lot of moisture, and their bodies, of course, are warm. And they're soiling the area. So all of this stuff combined, if it doesn't have ventilation, you're accumulating moisture, you're accumulating heat, and as Professor Science, I'm going to tell you, bacteria and organisms love heat and moisture. So it's a great place for bacteria and illness to grow if it can't, get some ventilation in there to keep it dry and keep it clean.
And birds in general are most susceptible to respiratory illness. They have a different type of breathing system than other creatures.
Respiratory system?
Yes. But so you want to make sure there's plenty of fresh air cycling in their environment. Yeah.
Yeah, so make sure the ventilation's on point for the quail. Even in the winter, instinctively, I guess, like, what do you call it? We want to make it nice and warm for the quail. So we're like, oh gosh, it's going to be cold. I'm going to cover up my hutch so they can stay warm. Well, they're going to stay warm with their feathers, with their own body structure, and they huddle up together. You really aren't going to need to heat that cage or warm that cage. At most, you may want to provide windbreaks, a place for them to have a windbreakage, but they're going to be okay. And you don't want to add, I would not recommend adding a, what do you call it, heating element?
No, definitely not.
Like a heating thing?
That's
What
a
did
good
Andy
comment.
Rabbit say? He said something good here. I completely wrapped my quail cage one winter. Within a few days, the dander dust was so bad under the tarp. Now I just blocked the wind. Yeah.
Yep.
One year, I guess years ago when we first started, I put a covering on top of the sand half. So part of the cage was still all exposed, but one part was kind of closed because it was so cold. And it just became a swamp of wet overnight because of their breath. It was very, very, stupid. I shouldn't have done that.
So some people are wondering, why is my sand always wet? I put dry, fluffy sand in there. Why is it wet? It's because they're breathing out moisture, and the sandbox area does not have enough ventilation to move that moisture out of the air. Yeah, that whole area became wet, and I had to clean it out just from one night. And the birds were very, very warm there. Yes, I've seen that in a sandbox before. Yeah, it's really amazing. I always tell people, because they remember as little kids to use it, so it's intuitive to them. When you're outside and you're in the wintertime, remember, and you can see your breath? That's why I keep drinking water. Because every time you talk or breathe, you're expelling the precious bodily fluid. You're losing fluid. You're losing moisture and water. And the same with the birds. Every time they breathe out, imagine that white cloud. But the birds respirate fast. If you watch them, they're like this. Yeah. Especially in the summer. So they're respirating a lot of this moisture. Yeah, we're a big fan of having, for the sheltered sandbox area, of having the roof, pretty much the whole ceiling ventilated as hardware cloth, and then having an overall roof over the structure. Oh yeah, for sure. You want to shield them from the elements, like direct sunlight. That allows nice, rain, and good flow of air. Yeah, and like we discussed earlier, if it's bad, and like you said, Andy, just add a windbreak if it's a bad season. And I got to redo all my hutches. Maybe I'll make a video about that because I have to refurbish them all. They don't need to be. I don't need to replace them. I just got to fix them. Oh, thanks, Taco. I think we're just getting towards the end stretch here. I went over most of the important things. So I don't know if it was everything you want to know about quail because I didn't go into we could talk for quite a while. Technical anatomical issues and everything. But
Yeah, anybody fishermen? Anybody go fishing? Because when you process your meat, quails, they have all kinds of goodies inside that we don't generally eat, that you can use as fishing bait, livers, etc. Except next time I'm going to start eating those livers. They're good for you. You know, I come from the days back when they fed the kids beef liver and onions.
Yeah, that is good for you.
It is good for you. The quail liver is good for you. Okay, anyway. It was Okay. One last thing. Taco and or anybody else who does not experience these quails. A very important thing to keep in mind is the ceiling structure. Christopher, I sent you a link. You might want to check later. Okay, thanks, Mona. So the ceiling structure of your hutch.
The height.
The height. Well, yes, the height. The height of the structure is important, and also the material and how the structure of the ceiling is made. I should have brought in my little mini hutch. No, whatever, it's upstairs. So the quail, when they get spooked or they're jittery, they're gonna they
just
hop.
When they get excited.
When they get excited,
flap
they
their
hop.
wings.
And if they get a lot of space, like when they start accelerating, they're getting some power. But when they really get high, they're full speed.
They're flushing up.
Then they can really extend themselves and get their head bobbed out. They can get injured. So if the quail hutch is over, I guess what?
So if
we
it's
like to keep it at about a foot.
Yeah, they say 24 inches to 2 feet. If you're gonna have a low ceiling, not to go higher than 2 feet.
Do not go higher.
But I feel like that is even
That's
kind
a
of
little
high
too
because
high.
they can get good speed.
Yeah, so we keep our hutches. We only build them. I build them 1 foot high. Yeah. Yeah, like that's generally what we would suggest. 12 inches or lower. And we keep ours at about a foot. And if it's going to be higher than a foot, like Verna said, it's got to be up there at like 5 or 6 feet, like a 6 foot hutch
Yeah, 6
height.
foot, because you want to make sure if they're flying up from the ground, they're just gonna arc down and not go right into the ceiling.
But yeah, by the time they get to that 6 foot point, they've lost most of that.
Floating.
They're like very short-lived rockets, and by the time they get to the 6 feet, they no longer have that upward momentum. Like the majority of that upward momentum is lost, and they're going to start descending. So if they hit something, it's not going to snap their neck. The other thing about the ceiling is it should have give. It should have give. So when they hit it, it's going to have a little give to it. I built a quail cage. It's under. If I build a quail cage, it's under 12 inches.
Yeah, that's good.
That's best. And the other thing is to not have a hard ceiling.
Yeah,
like
no matter
plywood.
the height. No matter what the height is, do what Christopher.
Yeah, do not use a hard ceiling like plywood or something because they'll just slam into that and they can hurt their neck, and they do. So if you have a hard ceiling, it probably means it's sealed, which isn't good because that's less ventilation, and they're okay with having a ventilated ceiling. But B, if it's a hard ceiling, it's hard and they can hurt themselves. So we use the hardware cloth, okay, on the top. It's 1/2 inch hardware cloth. But we use a hardware cloth because it has give. So when they hit it, and they jump into that thing frequently enough. I mean, you hear them, ba-bong, ba-bong, they'll get spooked and they'll bump into it. But we don't come out to a cage full of dead quail. And we've had people call us saying, my quails are dead.
Or they'll say they're laying on their side, they're not getting up. Usually it's a head or neck injury.
They hit a hard ceiling.
But if you do have a hard ceiling already in the hutch that you have, you can add a like a floating ceiling. You either put padding up or put like some wire just like a couple inches below it, fasten it properly so you have something that they'll hit that gives.
If I use an old rabbit cage, I will admit I'm too lazy to cut it down. So that's okay. You can always string something across. You can always string a low-hanging ceiling inside or something if you don't want to cut it down.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a general rule. That height thing, it's important.
It is part of their behavior. They're gonna, even if they're just having fun, they're gonna hop up. Or if they get startled, sometimes Christopher will be like, "Oh, I forgot to collect the quail eggs," and it's like dark. He goes out there.
Yeah, they go nuts.
And then they do like popcorn.
A flashlight.
Like, pop, 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 pop. Yeah, so you just want to make sure they're not going to hurt themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anything else, dear wife, lady, that I should mention? We don't call them popcorn for nothing. Yeah, because they do. Like, I like popcorn. All right. Anything popcorn's good. Popcorn shrimp, popcorn shrimp. Once you turn it into popcorn, it's tasty. Okay. Anything else important that I should mention on here? No.
Just a very side note: if you have chicks in the brooder and you're new to quail, do not be alarmed if you see them laying on their side with their legs stretched out in a position that makes them look deceased. Usually they're still alive and they're just sleeping in a stretched out, comfortable position.
Yeah, they look deceased. They look like you have a box of dead.
I've had many people say like, "Oh my god!" Like they were alarmed, but they were just sleeping.
Yeah.
So just know that it doesn't hurt to check on them.
Yeah, they're actually pretty cool. And you guys with kids, again, go down in that description, download this family book. I wrote a little kids book that you can read to the kids. I wrote it with nice, appropriate, children-friendly, family-friendly, easy-to-understand language. I've thought about doing a hardware cloth shelf and a rabbit cage that they can either sit or stay under it. Is that right? What is it?
I don't know.
They can either get on or stay under it. Yeah, that's... Oh, I see what he's saying. Like a 2-level. They can hop up on it. Yeah, as long as... As long as the ceilings... Like if the top ceiling above that has give to it, it should be fine. Of course, they might be going to the bathroom on one another.
Oh, that would happen, yeah. But, you know, I think there's another one as well.
Okay, I'm sorry I keep reaching down here. I used to poke them with my fingers to make sure they were alive.
Yeah, it's funny if you walk up on them quietly, sometimes they'll detect you, and then their little eye will open and they'll like look at you, but they won't move. Like assessing, like, do I need to panic or can I keep staying in my laying position? It's funny.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that just about does this very simple introduction to quail information. So if you guys are new to these birds, I hope that was helpful. And, Andy has a comment. I've done that times myself.
He's poked them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hope this was helpful to new people, experienced people. Thanks for stopping in and giving your input. I really actually appreciate it. You guys had good points. Anything else? I keep dropping everything. Ugh. I missed your butterfingers.
I think Verna had mentioned earlier, what do you recommend not to feed the quail?
The usual toxic stuff that people want to give chickens, like
we do.
Moldy,
we don't really
old food, molded breads, and all that kind of junk that you shouldn't be giving the chickens. Stuff that could cause a sour crop. And but we don't really see ours is run like a little, I said, factory workers.
Yeah, we don't really do treats and stuff for ours. Ours are pretty
utilitarian, applied worker.
So Verna, if you have any suggestions on
they're not mistreated. They're not mistreated. They have nice quail life.
Yeah, they have a quality life.
Yeah.
We just don't spoil them with foods. But feel free, Verna, to drop some foods not to feed in the comments. I did want to mention earlier, Verna had mentioned for dust and ventilation that you could place like an exhaust fan above the cage. And that works really great if you have like an indoor setup. Or if you have really adequate shelter from like the elements, water and stuff. But yeah, that was an interesting point to say because there are plenty of people who want to have them inside as well.
Yeah. So Verna was saying some of the things not to feed them: citrus, avocado, iceberg lettuce, to name a few. Yeah, I did a big video on, not a big video, actually I did a short video on all those, like potato skins, onions, and all that kind of fun stuff. The things that aren't good for poultry. There's toxins in certain plants. So if you guys are feeding, something people like to do is grab stuff from the kitchen table and just throw it out in the chicken yard and like use the chickens as the trash place. Like, I don't want to feed, I'll give it to the chickens. Just be careful, chicken or quail, some of the foods that we eat, they don't eat and can make them sick and can have bad side effects. And no greens from tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, etc. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to be wary of. So we just feed them their quail food. Occasionally, I guess I'll throw in a bug or something. And like in the summer, if there's little critters around, I'll throw them in there. Bugs. Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
I've been running back and forth because, much like the quail, my mouth is drying out. All right, guys, thanks a lot for stopping in here. Did you have a nice time
Yeah.
shooting? Angela knows a lot about these animals. They live watermelon. Well, who doesn't?
Mm-hmm. And cucumbers.
And cucumbers in the summer. Yeah. Watermelon, cucumber. Watermelon is actually my favorite food. It was my death row food. You know, if there's any to death row, you get your last meal. Cold watermelon. I would
and
first.
crispy.
Yeah, that's my favorite food.
Yeah.
I could just. Now I really want one. Plus, I'm thirsty. All right, guys. If you're new here and you haven't yet done so, do us a big solid and hit the like button and maybe even subscribe to here. We do these weekly educational things and Q&A because we always like to have participation. And I really do like to encourage people to learn stuff. There's so much garbage on the internet. It drives me nuts. You know, I have kids, and one of the biggest things I invested in the children was putting a lot of time into encouraging them to enjoy learning, to understand why learning increases the quality of their life. So I always try to encourage that into other humans because it actually does. You can't force anybody to do anything. But if you show somebody and help demonstrate the positive effect of a certain behavior, such as learning, they may start to adopt that behavior. And you don't have to force people to do anything. Like, oh, wow, I learned this. This makes me happy because now I'm doing this. Like with these quails, I give all that free stuff out to the kids and families because they'll learn something. They'll be like, oh, wow, that's really cool. It's a lot easier than I thought it'd be. I'm not afraid. People get scared to try new things, so don't be afraid. All right, Andy said, good night. I'm happy to have been able to make it tonight. Yeah, thanks, Andy. The quail watermelon rinds, if you pickle them. Oh, Taco said, you two always inspire me.
Aw.
Thanks, honey. Yeah, that's the whole point, to get, just do something and see how it goes. Sometimes things fail. Sometimes they are successful. Sometimes, usual times, are in between. And you learn and you keep improving. That's all. Simple stuff. If you've been on the earth for more than 5 years, you kind of figure that out. Except we get scared and we stop trying. And that's the bad part, So, even simple stuff like this. All right, cool. Do you have anything?
No, that was just kind of close to the edge.
We live close to the edge. All right.
Yeah, thanks everybody so much for stopping in.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
if you have any more questions or comments, feel free to drop them in.
Oh, thanks, Verna.
Verna.
Yeah, if you have any suggestions for something you want to hear us talk about or teach, because I actually do go in depth with subject matter, because I like doing that, please let me know. There's a wealth of information, and be happy to share it and do open question and answer. You're welcome, and thank you for your wisdom. Aw, thanks, Andy.
Yes.
All right, guys. I guess it's time for me to go lay in a horizontal position.
Yes.
We get up early in the morning, so
Have a wonderful night for those watching now, and for whoever watches later, have a wonderful day.
yes, indeed. We'll see you guys later.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for stopping in, guys.